what's going on, guys? It's Sean at Mustang 09 bringing you a new video, and today I'm excited to be working on my daughter's Power Wheels. Yes, we've had it for a little while now, and it's about time we start modifying it. In today's video, we're going to be installing the ML Toys lighting kit. And the reason why I went with this setup is because I'm not the best at finding ways to make things work all the time, and so anytime something comes in a kit and I don't have to piece it together, I'm all game. Plus, it was only like 30 bucks. From ML Toys, and I'll put a link in the description so you can check it out yourself. On their website, it says you're going to need a list of tools, those being a drill with some drill bits, some wire cutters, electrical tape, Phillips screwdriver. You can use a utility knife or a Dremel. We're going to be using a utility knife. And the last thing that they say you need is some common sense. So I hope we have enough of that and we can get this install done. Let's jump right into it. A brief overview of the kit that I got comes with headlights and tail lights. I went ahead and ordered an additional set of fog lights. That way we could have all of the lights on the vehicle working. And I didn't know that the kit came with brake lights, so I went ahead and ordered an extra set, not knowing it was extra. So now I have 2 sets of tail lights, but that's gonna work in our favor because, as you guys know, on the Mustang, they have the tri-bar lights, so there's 3 of them. So my plans are to go ahead and order a 3rd set so that each light in the rear will have their own lights. But we're gonna see how this install goes with what I have now and see if we need to order that 3rd one or not. Now that you guys know which kit we're going to be using, let's identify the lights we're going to be swapping in. The headlights, the fog lights, as well as putting some in the tails. Looking under the vehicle, I noticed on the fog lights that in the center of the fog light is a screw, and I'm pretty sure that's holding it into place. So what I did was I bought some rubber silicone in case we have to remove that screw and find a way to get that housing to fit back in the vehicle without the screw. But we'll tackle that when that time comes. First off, let's go to the headlights. Alrighty, so for me, I have this really awesome hardwood desk that I can put the car on and get on its side so that I can access the headlights very easily right here. I'm going to take my Phillips head screwdriver, go on in there and remove the screws, and I'll show you guys how to do that. Now that we can see under the car, I'm going to go ahead and try and remove the entire housing of the headlight. It's held on by a screw down here in the black piece and one up top here. So let's get that removed. In order to remove that entire light housing, there is one screw under the hood you are going to need to remove, simply on the side over by the fender. Just like that, the housing comes out. And as you can see on the back of the housing, you have 2 more screws that actually hold the light housing in away from the bezel. So we're going to remove those 2 now. And just like that, the light is apart. And that's crucial because when you're going to feed the headlight in, it's going to come through the front because it's a larger portion that's going to basically clamp on to where this headlight is. So now we get to drill. First things first, we're going to take our headlight, and I'm going to use this shoebox here to drill on top of. That way I'm not punching into my nice work desk. And that way if I do punch through, if it's cardboard that's laying flat, it'll still hit the desk. This will just go into nothing because it's a box. So we're going to start small and work our way up. The ultimate goal is to end up with a hole that is 3/8 big. So this is our last and final drill bit, but we're going to start small, like I said. So we'll drill a pilot hole in the center of the light. And I think I want to drill from front to back. That way there's no burrs facing the front of the lens. And let the drill do the work, and now we have our pilot hole. So we'll step it up a couple sizes. Go ahead and make a bigger leap to a 1/4 inch. Looking good, looking good. Now we will go to 5/16. Which this should be 1 step short of the final 3/8. Last but not least, 3/8. Before we move on, we're going to clean some of these burrs off, and this is where your Dremel or your utility knife is gonna come handy. Looking good. Now let's grab our light and see if it'll fit in there. When you receive your ML Toys light kit, you're gonna have yellow lenses and clear lenses. The clear are your brake lights, the yellows are your headlights. So that's pretty cool. 3/8 is like a very tight fit. I am basically threading this light through that hole. So if you want it to slide in, I might recommend you going a little bit bigger or just wallowing it out with the drill bit that you have. But I'm cool with this. Extra tight fitment is always good to me. So we're gonna continue to screw this in and put the locking jam nut on the back, and this headlight is in. One headlight installed. We'll feed the nut back on the back of the wires here and lock it down just for extra measure. Now that this headlight is in, we're gonna rebuild it in the housing. As you can see, it fits back just as if it were factory, so everything's great. You just simply have a cord coming out of the back now. So we're gonna tighten the 2 screws that hold the headlight into the bezel, and then we'll mount this back into the power wheels. Some of you may ask why I'm using this by hand instead of a drill. Anytime you're screwing into plastic, you don't want to over tighten it. You don't want to spend too much speed through it and heat it up and melt the plastic threads. So that's why I choose to do it by hand. Now that the headlight's in, we're going to replace the screws we took out to remove the entire housing. Don't forget the one under the hood that's in the fender. I'll do that one right quick. I just wanted to bring you guys around so that you could see where this one goes. It's right in here. And just like that, your first LED headlight is installed. It's super easy. I'm just gonna replicate that same process for the passenger side. For now, we're gonna move on to the fog lights so I can show you how we'll mount those. Now we move on to our fog lights. In order to gain access to that, there's one screw right here. I've moved the car off the table once again so that I can rotate the wheels and gain easier access to that screw. Short stubby Phillips, get it right out. Now that we have our fog light out of the vehicle, you can tell that the mounting hardware is directly behind the fog light itself. Not to be worried though, I think we can overcome this by continuing to drill it out where we should and using this Permatex black silicone to put it back in place. This is more of a permanent placement now once you silicone it in, but I think you can still pry it off later if you ever have to replace the lights or fix them or adjust them in any way. One other thing to note is that the mounting location for the screw is also too small for the back of our light to protrude through the body of the vehicle. So what we're gonna have to do is run that same 3/8 drill bit through here to allow the light to access the back of the vehicle and screw in that way. So now that we have our fog light off, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the sticker fog light because we're gonna be installing a true LED fog light. One fake fog light out of there, one to install. As you can see, we have a perfect center point with the mounting in the back. So we're gonna go ahead and drill that out, and we'll start from the rear with our smallest drill bit to get us the perfect guide hole. Just like that, we have our first hole. And now we'll move on through the order of drill bits, smallest to biggest. The second size drill bit will not fit through the back of the fog light bezel, so we're gonna drill it from the front. I created a hole in this shoebox so that that can sit down in there and flush while I drill downwards. There is our final hole in our fog light bezel. Now that you have your fog light prepared to go in the vehicle, what we're going to do is we're going to use some Permatex on the back side of the housing to mount it into the vehicle so that it doesn't come out, since we removed the only mounting screw that held this in place. It is pretty tight with this fitting going through the new hole with the 3/8, so it'll fit snug there, but we want to make sure we have some backup to it. So we're going to use some Permatex black silicone to hold it into place. We're going to go on the outer edge here. This all touches the vehicle, and then this part here you can't be seen from outside, so you don't really want to put it here, but more so on the inside. Create a nice little bead around, and it'll also weatherproof it if you ever were to drive through puddles or if you ever got caught in the rain. Now we'll reinstall on the vehicle. Feed the wire through our drilled out hole. Then push into place. And if you just so happen to get any Permatex on the outside, go ahead and clean that up with a wet rag, followed by a dry one to make for a clean install. Now that we have our headlight and our fog light in, I'm going to repeat the same process on the opposite side of the vehicle. So I'll do that off camera, bust through that, and then I'll show you how we can wire those lights in through the hood to the battery. Now that the headlights and fog lights are mounted and the wires are routed under the hood, we're going to install the on-off switch and wire these bad boys up to the battery so that we can turn them on and see just how bright they are. For me, I want to mount the switch inside of the car. I'm thinking in this vent hole right here. So what I'm going to do is try and remove the windshield and see what's under there and how we can drill it out to mount that switch. In order to gain access under the dash, we're going to remove the windshield. We're going to do that by removing a screw behind the mirror, 1, 2, 3, and 4 up front, and also another screw back here. So let's get started. It appears the steering column is preventing us from removing the dash. In order to remove that, if you put the car together, you'll remember there's a screw holding a cap on so that the steering column doesn't fail when you're driving and turning. We're just going to remove that one screw, and then this should all pop out. Be careful when you're pulling out. You do have wire connections under here that you're going to need to unplug. Just like that, the dash is out. So as you can see, here is the vent where I want to locate the on-off switch for the lights. And on the back side, there's nothing behind it. There is a knob coming off of that, which we'll be able to drill through when we drill the according size for the switch. Just going to remove that vent sticker. The hole we need to drill for this does seem to be larger than a 3/8, so you're going to want to gradually work your way up to your largest bit size until this will fit in snugly. We're going to do that now. We're going to install it into that vent hole right there. The first hole I'm going to drill, I'm going to do it with the dash off. It does have that little pin in the back, so it should give us a great guide hole to let us start moving up in bits as we need to go larger and larger. So remove this one more time. Let's just flip it over right quick and drill that one guide hole down in there. Perfect. So much like we did the fog light, now we will do this. So reinstall so that it stays stationary, doesn't move on you as you're drilling holes. Oops. Come on. Just like that. Now we have our guide hole, and it'll make it easier when we're working our way up to larger bits. We're going to bump it up here. This is a 1/2 inch like spade bit. I don't have any more standard drill bits of the that are bigger than a 3/8, so we're going to give this one a shot, see what we can do here. This is a 5/8. I'm going to try and control it a little better so it doesn't bounce around in there and so that we still have a really clean look. They do say if you don't have larger bits, you can use a utility knife or a Dremel. I would rather just give it a shot with this spade than try and carve it up with a utility knife. And there we have it. Switch is installed. Now that our switch is installed, what we can do is continue to remove this dash all the way out. That's going to give us access to the back of the switch, so that'll make the wiring process that much more easier. So the next step of this install is going to be to splice the fog light wire into the headlight wire, so we have one set of red and black wires running to our new terminal that's going to be by the battery. And to do so, we're just going to cut away some of the protective in the middle, strip the wires, attach this to that. We're going to solder it and make sure it's a clean fit. With these wires being so thin, you got to be extremely careful when you're splicing into these. You can cut through them just like that. So we're trying to be very delicate when cutting in and getting rid of some of the insulation around the wires, and especially when we go in to solder them. It's going to be hard for me to show you guys, but I do have the two wires wrapped together here. Now I'm simply going to go in with a low heat soldering iron and solder these together. Now that those are soldered together, I'm going to test them real quick before I go ahead and wrap them in electrical tape and insulate them again. So I'm going to take my positive and my negative and just simply touch them to the positive and negative on the battery terminal and see if the lights will come on. And we have fog lights and headlights. So it looks like our soldering job went okay. Now I'm just going to take some electrical tape, wrap all that up tight so that there's no exposed wires, and we're going to be good to go and move on to the passenger side. Good work. Now that we have those spliced in together and they're just running into the engine bay as two separate wires, one for the right side, one for the left side, we're going to wire up our toggle switch on the dash that we installed earlier. We're going to use some extra wiring provided by ML Toys. Don't worry, they provide you with plenty of extra wiring to run lights from the front to the back of the vehicle, and also for your power switch, or your on-off switch. They do also provide the spades that go in the back of that, so right now we're going to wire up a positive and negative, crimp those down, plug them in, and then we'll work on wiring this to the battery terminal. Inside of this little spade connector, these wires are much thicker than what's on the back of the lights. So as long as that's inside of there, we are going to take this and crimp it. So that is tight on there. And that wire is going nowhere. And then we'll do the same to the positive side. So perfect. Now that these spades are on there, we can plug them into the back of the toggle power on off switch. It doesn't matter which color goes to which one. We're just going to simply plug them in and then route our wiring back into the engine compartment. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow the factory wiring harness. There's these two plugs for our car that go to the push start button and also the speed control and the speaker. So I'm going to run these wires exactly where these are ran, and it'll make for a clean install. Perfect. Now we'll mount the dash back in place. We shouldn't have to access the back of the switch any further. All right, now that we've gone through our instructions, which ML Toys does a really good job of providing, it's a diagram and also some verbiage on how to do all of this. I'm no professional, I'm simply following the directions. We're gonna tap some power and ground into our battery terminals here with the provided taps that ML Toys sends you. Next part of the instructions tells us to put this little splicer piece onto the black wire of our battery. This is the negative cable, and before you go ahead and cinch that down, you're going to want to run the black cable off of the back of your switch into the hole. You're going to notice on this, there's going to be a spot where you can run a pass-through wire, and so you want to make sure the black terminal is on that, and then the other side is just a dead end, and that's where we'll put the black wire from our switch to that. Now that we have our splicer ran onto our negative cable, we're going to run the black wire from the back of the switch into the other side of the splicer. And what we're going to do is we're simply going to use some pliers to squeeze down on this metal portion here that'll connect these two wires together on the inside of this splicer. Just like that, those wires are touched together, and we will simply close the blue door, and we're done with the negative side. Perfect. Moving on in the instructions, we're going to take the other wire off the back of our on-off switch, mount it inside the vehicle, and ML Toys gives us this perfect little distribution block. You're going to want to lift the arm all the way up, and we're going to insert this wire in. You are going to need to strip about 3/8 of an inch off of the wire so that you have access once you put it inside the distribution block. And let me just tell you guys, when you lift this little arm up here, it's going to be difficult at first. Just lift it all the way up, and then it'll snap back down and clamp onto our wire. So we're going to insert our other switch wire into the distribution block and simply snap down the top clip. And now our wire is inside. Perfect. Now that we have our negative distribution block set up, we're going to work on our positive. We're going to take another clip just like we did on the black wire and install this on the white wire. Now that you have your second clip on, do not squeeze it down just yet. You're going to need to run another wire from that to your second distribution block. However, my kit said to run a white wire. I don't see a white wire in my kit, so I'm going to use another red wire. I've gone ahead and trimmed 3/8 of insulation off the end. And I'm going to put that into the distribution block, and then this will go into the other side of our splice clip on our positive battery terminal. Now that we have this wire tucked in all the way, we're going to use our pliers and push down on the metal piece in the center, and that'll lock everything together. There we go. So now it's seated flush, and we can close the top door. And just like that, you have your 2 distribution blocks ready to go. Now is the time that we connect our positive power wires to the positive distribution clip and our negative wires to the negative distribution clip. First thing I'm going to do is give each wire a little bit more length from the factory insulation. So I'm going to take some of this black off here, and we will be able to stretch these wires out a little bit further, giving us the desired room we need to work with. Perfect. So now we have our positive distribution block, which goes to the white wire on your battery terminal. And it's in. Cool. So now we're going to take our negative distribution block, or clip, whatever you want to call it, and do the same with our negative wires, aka the black wire. So positive red, negative being black. And guys, the instruction says that's it for our headlights and our fog lights. So we're going to put the battery in place, plug it in, and see if our switch up here controls all of those. So fingers crossed, let's test it out. Oh, the moment of truth, putting the battery in place. Okay, nothing blew up yet. So now we're gonna flip the switch and see if we have some fog lights and some headlights. Fingers crossed. Let's do this. Boom! They're both working. That is so sick, guys. And with that, guys, that concludes our install of the ML Toys headlight and fog light kit. Stay tuned for part 2. We're going to dive into the tail lights on this. I'm going to have to figure out how to get access to those and take it apart. I'm going to be sure to show that to you in that process. So make sure to like and subscribe to this video so that you can see when the next part comes out. Other than that, I want to thank you so much for watching, and definitely give props to the guys over at ML Toys for putting together a great kit, easy instructions, and just, it's super simple. So if I can do it, trust me when I tell you, you can do it. Thank you so much for watching. These lights look sick, and stay tuned for a full video review on them when my daughter gets to drive them at nighttime, and we'll bring you some really, really cool shots then. Thanks again for watching. It's been Sean or Mustang 09. Take it easy, boys, and we'll see you back here next time. Peace.